Oh, they're making a sequel to Puss in Boots. Oh man, why? I mean, it's like nobody even cared about the first one. It was so forced and pointless. Oh, I'm not going to think about this movie ever again for the rest of my life. What? How?
Well,
Hey everybody, how's it going? I am Laser Dude, and welcome to another Laser Dude review. Today we are reviewing Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. You know, I gotta say, Antonio Banderas, his voice is it's such a good voice. It sounds like he says everything with a really intense accent. Can you imagine him in a drive-thru like, I will have a Big Mac and the extra large fry? I mean, it's just it makes it sound so dramatic and important and everything. So, yeah, Puss in Boots. This movie, every other intro, if you watch the intro to their reviews, is the exact same. And it's going to be no different for me. I saw the original Puss in Boots. I didn't think too much of it. It was a little bit lame. Not too bad, but just kind of okay. And I didn't think they would ever make a sequel all these years later. But now it's here, and now it's amazing. And I'm not saying anything different. I'm saying those exact same things. Look, when it came to this movie, I actually, even when the reviews came out and started coming out, I was like, yeah, am I really going to want to see Puss in Boots? I haven't been seeing a whole lot of animated movies in theaters recently. I think it has a lot to do with Disney giving their movies straight to Disney Plus not too long after it's come out, so I haven't had the desire to go to too many animated movies. But the fact that it was so high, that the Rotten Tomatoes rating, which I think what is drawing people to this movie, is the Rotten Tomatoes rating was so high, it was like, but, real? Well, now I gotta find out. And okay, the plot of this movie is, of course, Puss in Boots is the cat from the Shrek movies, and he's just living his best life, or his best ate life, when all of a sudden he dies one more time and he's on his last life. At first he tries to brush it aside like it's no big deal, but eventually the fear of death catches up with him and he decides to go in retirement. But then he hears about the wishing star and how he could wish for all of his lives back and he could be Puss in Boots, the legend, once again. Along the way he faces off against many opponents like Goldilocks and the Three Bears, Jack Horner, that kid from that one nursery rhyme that you barely remember, and he meets up even with his old flame, Kitty Softpaws, played by Selma Hayek. But he's also being pursued by this mysterious wolf who has really got him terrified. And so the journey is on to see who can find the wishing star first and whose wish will be granted by the end. So let me just say, what is it about this movie in particular that makes it such a big surprise that everyone's going gaga over it? Well, I can narrow it down to a few things. Number one, the animation. Everyone's saying the same thing, and I'm going to say it too, Spider-Verse style. It's very quick, it's very fast-paced, it's very stylized, the way that the characters move through the scenes. Like, the original Shrek movies were more of a hyper-realistic look when it came to the human characters of the film. They tried to make them look almost as real as you could in a 3D computer. But this, it's more stylized. Everything's more stretched and more, more like a traditional animated would, where it exaggerates the features and stuff like that to simulate life, but not actually try to look realistic. And because of that, the characters they all look beautiful. I mean, it's kind of interesting. It's like, you just look at a still from, like, here's Puss in Boots from his original movie that they had him do, and here's one from The Last Wish. Just look at these. You can tell which ones is the crisper image and the clearer, the better looking one. Just simplify it. And I think that it's very good with his style. The fight scenes are so quick and fast and dynamic, and also really different from one another. There's no two fight scenes that feel exactly the same, which is interesting because there's a lot of different scenes with these three groups of characters of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, Jack Horner, and Puss in Boots and Kitty Softpaws all clashing around each other. Those three things, they must clash about like 3 or 4 times in the movie, but every single time they do clash, it feels different. There's a different element element into it. And they have a lot of really fun dynamics. Like, the second thing I want to go into, okay, the first thing that makes this movie super great is the animation. Second thing, it's creativity. The way this movie has structured its world and the way it does things is so creative. The shots are creative. There's some shots in here that I was just blown away. I'm like, oh, that's cool. And honestly, I haven't felt like that since, I don't know, Everything Everywhere All at Once. That was the other movie this year that I was just like, ooh, that's just chef's kiss with that. But the creativity of the worlds is also really good, because this forest, like, I hear like, oh, this wishing star falls into this enchanted forest. Okay, how many of those have we seen? Plenty. But what's different is the map is the only way you can get to the wishing star, and the map will change the forest depending on who is holding it. So if I'm holding the map, it would be a devised area of specific tortures that would be bad news for me. There would be like, oh, here's the area of photos of you when you had a mustache, or here's the area of, everyone who just doesn't find you funny. Like, this would be the stuff that would drive me crazy, and that would be my nightmares and stuff like that. But it also makes it interesting when two people are looking at the map and is trying to force two different worldviews on the world. There's so much creativity in all of the scenes like that. And also, just with the characters themselves, they're very fun. I like the dynamic of the three Goldilocks and the three bears, because it's interesting, because this one it recontextualizes the story. It's like Goldilocks, they change. Instead of a little girl who got lost in the woods and stumbled upon the three bears home, they change it to she's an orphan who was set loose in the woods, or was discarded in the woods or something like that, who comes across the three bears home and is adopted into their family, and they have an interesting, fun dynamic with that. That's actually really cool. All the villains have something that makes them interesting. We got Jack Horner, which, as I say, he's the guy in the nursery rhyme who sticks his finger in a pie and says, "What a good boy am I." It's nothing of a name and everything, and I barely remembered. I remember a kid sticking his finger in a pie and pulling out a plum, but that's all I remember of it. But the character in here, they just make him so over the top with how little he cares about human life. He has so many men on his side, and yet he doesn't care if any of them die, and they do die. This film isn't just like, aha, they died, but really they fell off a cliff when we see them going into the water, and they're like, oh, mercy. No, we see skeletons. We hear people talking about how they killed so many people. We see people die. Some girl gets turned into flipping gold, for crying out loud. It's really, and it's funny. The deaths are funny. It's never like overly graphic or gory or anything like that. It's still in good humor, but enough to shock you a little bit and be like, oh my gosh, like the level that he will go at, where he doesn't give a crap about his men working for him, is so over the top. It's so funny. He's played by John McGinley, and he's just so funny, and I kind of just like how his non-apologetic nature, and they make a fun choice of giving him Jiminy Cricket. Like, he throws everything in this magic bag, which is obviously from Mary Poppins, that has no end, and so he actually threw in Jiminy Cricket, and so he's like, oh, for some reason he sounds like Jimmy Stewart, and so he's like, oh, you shouldn't do that, that's not right. It's funny. They have a real fun dynamic with that. Other villains in this movie, okay, I'm just going to talk about him, the Wolf. Holy crap, everything everybody's saying about this character is true. One of the best Dreamworks villains of all time. He literally gave me chills, okay? And I'm a full-grown adult watching this movie, and even I'm like, he is creepy as heck. Like, the way that he moves through scenes, and the way you feel the tension rising. Like, first you'll just hear the whistle, and then you'll see the hairs on Puss stand up, and then he'll turn around, and there he is, just always haunting Puss in Boots. It's so good. I'm not going to say too much else on the Wolf right now. I'm going to wait till the spoiler part of the review, and then I'm probably going to not stop talking about him. But I also like the dynamic between Puss and Kitty Softpaws. Kitty Softpaws was a character who is just the typical femme fatale type character in the last one, and she is in a lot of ways still that in this one, but I like the dynamic of her, like, being she's just wanting to find someone that she can trust, and the stuff that they do with Puss and how that relationship fizzled out. is actually really good. Because you gotta think, you know, like the original Puss in Boots is before the Shrek movies, so what happened between there and the Shrek movies where he and Kitty Softpaws just were not together? So this is taking place after the Shrek movies, where that one was before, and I just really like the humor, the characters, the way they work off each other is really good. There's a little dog in this film, and I'm just repeating everything everybody else says because we all saw the same thing. We thought this dog was going to be a crappy little side character that was going to be super annoying and be very minion-like, well, maybe not minion-like, but very annoying. That's what we all thought. And it wasn't. The dog was very, very funny and very cute and actually quite a lovable character. He was naive, but there were scenes that he was just like, it was like there's scenes that where you felt sad for the character and you felt the character, you know, I don't know. It's just like you felt good for the character. The character was very good, very well handled, and very enjoyable throughout the whole course of the film. The journey that Puss himself goes in this film is a journey about coming to grips with your own mortality and knowing that you're only human. You know, like he wants to be Puss in Boots, the legend, the over-the-top, larger-than-life character, but he's not respecting life. Like he's not respecting, like he only wants to be the legend, is only looking after himself. And the end of this movie is he has to learn to respect death, and to respect, by respecting death, because if you don't respect death, if you laugh in the face of death and don't take death seriously, then death itself then you don't respect life. So yeah, I'll get more into it once I get into the spoiler part of the review, which I should probably just get there now. All I can say is the characters are great, the humor is very great throughout this movie. There's a lot of moments that made me laugh really hard. The characters and the villains are great, and there's also a lot of like dynamics in it. Now, are there some predictable parts? Like I could predict what Goldilocks' wish is. That was kind of pretty predictable, and they kind of hype it up to like, ooh, look at this, and stuff like that. But beyond that, I still thought that the movie was really enjoyable, and it has a lot of great humor, and honestly, it was one of Dreamworks' best. Honestly, finding a rating for this film in my head is going to be pretty hard, just because I thought it was so good. But I've decided I'm going to give it a 8 out of 10. It's a great movie. This is really something that the whole family can enjoy. There are some dark moments that might be a little scary for your kids, but I would say it's the good type of scary. It's not the scary that's going to give them nightmares for months and months, although who knows. But I think it's the type of scary that is good, that the kids can feel, but then feel relieved by the end of it when the hero makes it out. So that's my review on it. Now I'm going to be going to spoiler parts of the review. Please see this movie. It's not making his money back as much as it should be, and I think you can tell everybody that you know that they should see this movie. So yeah, and now spoilers in 3, 2, 1. The wolf is death. I mean, the moment he showed up, I kind of thought that. It's not like a big mystery or anything, but it doesn't need to be. Like I saw someone say in their reviews, like, why didn't Puss figure out that it's death? Would you ever think, if this was you in real life, that the personification of death is coming after you? Is that really something you would consider? No, of course not. So yeah, no, I give the character leave, but I like the moment where it is just attacking Puss and relentlessly going after him, and you see a drop of blood come down, and you see Puss is like, I am outmatched. I cannot defeat this guy. It's like you feel the terror with him, and that whistle that I can't remember the tune enough, but it's so haunting, and it's so good. And at first I thought, I was like, okay, of course he's whistling because he's the big bad wolf and he'll blow your house down. But I remember it's like, oh wait, the big bad wolf is already in Shrek. You know, we've already seen the big bad wolf, but then I thought, maybe that's the bad wolf and this is the big bad wolf. But either way, he's death. Have you ever seen the personification in death in an animated movie before? Like a full feature animated movie? The only thing that I can really think of is like Hades, and even him, he wasn't death itself. He was like the guardians of the dead, you know, or like he was like the underground, whatever. it wasn't the same thing as this, and I love how he says, no, not symbolically, not quite literally, I am death, and I am pissed off, and I like the dynamic with that. Death is after him, because Puss in Boots has never ever respected death. He always says, I laugh in the face of death, ha ha ha, and it's so... It's like, so death is like, you laugh at me, but then I'm going to take you out. You don't deserve this life. But he grows over the course of the movie to not, like, because you can't live in fear of death. That's what, like, something that Puss has to realize, that he can't live in fear of death and keep on running forever. Death is the opponent that will always catch up to every single one of us, and every single one of us will lose eventually. But that doesn't mean you should live in fear of death either. And Puss in Boots, in the end, stands up to death, and he faces off against him and gets a licking, but he knows, he says, I know I cannot defeat you, but I will never stop fighting for this one life that I have left. And at that point, death sees him and sees, like, you respect death now. You do not disregard life. You don't have anything like that. I wanted to destroy the person, the legend who is all about himself and didn't care about anything other than his own ego and his own legend, and didn't respect death. But now you respect death because you are fighting for your own life. And it's really good. Just every scene that Death is in, he steals the show. And it's so good. And it's, as I said, one of the best DreamWorks villains. I love it. It's like anytime he shows up, I'm just like, holy crap. Like getting those hairs going on the back of your neck. If there was an award for best villain of the year, it's going to this wolf. Because it's just that good. I want to give his voice actor credit. I looked it up. I don't know him in anything. Wagner Moria. Brazilian actor. This guy, I mean, his voice, it wasn't just his voice. He did great. He did amazing. It was everything about the character. It was his voice that got it down to the right creepy tone. It was the music that gave you the chills and gave you that intense feeling of dread and despair. It was the animation that really sold the way this character looks. Like when he's throwing his two sais and he's coming after you, it's like terrifying and great. So the animation, the atmosphere, the music, the character, the actor, all put together this wonderful performance of the personification of death. And I am just, you know what I hope DreamWorks does? If like, you know, if there's like a future DreamWorks movie in like either the Kung Fu Panda universe or in maybe even the, you know, in the Shrek movies, if there's a character about to die, I just want to see this character in the background. Not in the forefront, not that you would see him, but I just want him in the background, so like he's an Easter egg that you would find later. I just think that would be so cool. So good. I love the moments that we get from Puss where he's struggling with it. Normally, I actually don't like, I'm going to be honest, I don't like the hero who has to leave his life behind, who's so washed up now and is barely just an image of his former glory. I normally don't like that story, but I actually really like the way it was handled in this film. I like the way Puss is, like, I sympathize with his fear. I was afraid of this flipping thing and he wasn't even after me or real. So it's like, I sympathize with his character, and then he goes through his trauma. Like, there's a moment where he's having a panic attack and is literally, like, hyperventilating and can't calm down. And the way they handle that scene is so good. And the fact that he just lays, you know, the dog just lays right there and is with him and encourages him just by being there. And I think that's such a great moment. When you are going through struggles, just having somebody that is there with you is such an amazing thing. And it's so good. The movie has great symbolism, great animation, great action. All the humor is so funny and so great. And the fight scenes are incredible. All I can say is, you don't need to see the first one to see this movie. It doesn't really help. All I would say is maybe you understand Kitty Softpaws as a character maybe a little bit more. But beyond that, this is a great movie. And I think it is one of the year's best. I'm so glad I saw it. And I really, if you haven't seen it, well, you shouldn't have stayed through this whole spoiler part of the review. But I hope you encourage other people to see it as well. In any case, I am Lazy Dude. Thanks for watching. And fear me if you dare. By the way, what does that even mean? Fear me if you dare? Like if you don't dare, then you're not afraid of him? But it's like, It's like saying, don't you fear me, I'm cute and cuddly, don't be afraid. It doesn't make sense, Puss.
Be sure to check out some of these other videos on my channel. And wait for more coming soon.